podcast where we know that the only certainty is uncertainty. We know everybody hates change, so we're on a mission to inspire people to see change differently. Our guest lineup of thought leaders, innovators, and transformation pioneers will guide us through uncertainties and discover new opportunities which arise in these interesting times. Today we're joined by sustainability expert, adept in strategy, B Corp certification and ESG communication, Demi Heath. The ramifications of the climate crisis continue to impact our daily lives, at work, at home, and planning for the future. So, how can we move away from viewing it as a simple buzzword? Demi opens the door for organisations to make green goals achievable and enjoyable, and looks at how we can leverage tools like AI to create transformation roadmaps which work for everybody. This week on the podcast, we're welcoming our guest, Demi Heath, who is an expert in sustainability consulting with extensive experience in ESG strategy and B Corp certification. She's worked with brands from JDE Coffee, Monica Vinader, and is pioneering some work on AI and how that's used and efficiency to enhance efficiency and effectiveness of sustainable business management. So, Demi, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. And yeah, sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful there with sustainability and trying to get all the words out there. But Demi, we're really excited to hear a little bit from you. Obviously, sustainability is a major trend across businesses at the moment, especially with kind of transformation and that idea of impact and how businesses, and from small businesses to large organisations, how they can really create impact with sustainability initiatives. So first of all, could you really give us a bit of a background of who you are and how you got into, the kind of sustainability industry, would you call it? Or
yeah, definitely an industry. There's lots of professionals working in this space. There's lots of graduate programs coming out at universities, so a big cohort of people coming out with new expertise. When I went to university, sustainability courses, environmental conservation courses, they weren't really a thing. So I actually studied photography at university, very different background. So I come from the creative industries first and foremost. I got into sustainability doing that photography course in my final year. I really wanted to focus on how photography and the visual arts can change people's minds and hearts. I think there's a huge amount to be said for art, galleries, museums to be able to have that initial stepping stone for people to think about the world differently, to open their eyes to different cultures, different ways of existing and being. So I did my final year project on green gardens and green roofs in London, using big industrial spaces that had previously been completely abandoned and turning them into safe havens for bees and vegetable growing. So it was a very simple photographic project, but the people that I got to meet along the way were so inspiring. And I took that with me. So I actually moved over to New Zealand and lived there for 7 years. And when I was over there, I had a full-time job working for the National Museum. And then alongside that, I set up and ran a photography festival that was called Photoval. It was the capital city's first photography festival. And I really wanted that to have purpose and meaning and to bring stories that could change people's minds and hearts when I was over there. So I only accepted documentary photography that was focused on economic, social and environmental issues. And we ran that for 3 years before COVID shut us down and took away the opportunities for events to happen. And through that, I had kind of 15,000 people across the few years come and see amazing work from all over the world, but primarily focused in New Zealand, and really, really great feedback that people took away inspiration to be able to carry out and act in small ways in their own personal lives, which was fantastic. And of course, COVID lockdown allowed us all some time to think and take a step back and reevaluate what we want what we wanted out of life. I've spoken to lots and lots of people who had similar revelations to me. So I wanted my professional life to kind of match what I was doing in my personal life. So I left the museum and I actually went to work for a B Corp over in New Zealand. Shout out to Sharesies, an incredible organisation that was aiming to democratise investing. The financial world is notoriously hard to understand and gain access to, very much an old boys club generally. So they really wanted to break down the barriers for that. So they enabled me to carry out some professional development and to carry on their B Corp certification and their carbon neutrality certification as well. So I did some studying with Harvard Business School when I was with them in sustainable business management, and learning from the B Corp community and the local Wellington small business community when I was over there as well. So that's my background. And then I came back to the UK and wanted to bring all that knowledge and passion into consulting, working with as many different businesses as possible to get them through B Corp certification and to help them build out their ESG strategies. So that's my long kind of professional life story, but we'll give you some context as to why I love it so much.
Amazing. No, it's as you say, I think a lot of people have that kind of, whether it was lockdown or, the kind of current weather and things like that are making people think about it. And I was interested to hear your thoughts on what the main drivers behind, I know people are thinking about it, but brands really focusing on ESG and, whether it's a B Corp status or green certification, something along those lines. What are the drivers behind that at the moment?
Yep, I think there's a couple of core things going on there. One of which is stakeholder interest, and whether that's coming from investor interest and the people who are giving the businesses the money to carry on existing, or whether it's regulatory bodies coming in from industry or from government. There's a really high expectation now that businesses have plans for the future around how the business is going to be sustainable, whether that's through a certification or through strategy development. There's a big need for this because there is big financial risk involved with the environmental degradation that we're seeing across the world and social instability. And if businesses aren't taking those major risks into account, then ultimately it affects the long-term growth of the business, it affects the value of the organisation. So investors want to see that there's planning being involved, that those risks are being taken into account, and governments and industry bodies are seeing that as a way of really managing their industries and making sure that people are moving forward, putting their best foot forward, and that we're all adhering to things like the Paris Agreement, all of the EU directives that are being set out and beyond. So definitely stakeholder involvement is very strong there. And then stakeholders in the form of consumers. B Lab actually carried out a couple of studies over the last year or so, and there is a growing awareness of the B Corp certification. So the last study that they did, 38% of people that they spoke to in the UK are aware of B Corp. Wow. And then even beyond that, I think it was 2/3 of people that they surveyed said that the government should be putting in measures similar to B Corp to ensure that businesses are doing better by people and planet. So to be able to be an industry leader and to stand out from the crowd and to get more interest in your business, then B Corp certification, making sure that you are being quite vocal about the things that you are and aren't doing around sustainable business practices is really, really important now.
Yeah. And I suppose from your perspective, are you seeing that people are actually invested in this, or are they kind of more doing it because of legislation or EU regulation? And, are people even aware of the EU regulation, especially over here? Because a lot of maybe people, especially consumers, don't feel like we're in Europe anymore. So do we have to adhere to those? So, yeah, are you kind of seeing that there's a real desire for brands and companies that you interact with to invest in these types of strategies?
It's a real mixed bag, and it's been a learning journey for me actually, because I have an intrinsic passion for it, and you know, I do this for a living because it sits core to my values and how I want to live my life and how I want to kind of go through the world. So coming across business leaders, business owners, investors who are doing it because regulations are being pushed upon them, because their investors and their shareholders are pushing it on them, has been a learning curve for me to try and understand that that's okay. We need everybody to come on this journey together, regardless of the why behind it. So I've definitely seen a big mixture of people who are doing it for a tick boxing exercise. And I think that's okay, because they still have to go through the same process as everybody else. And generally through that process, you know, I've worked with clients for up to a year. There becomes a deeper level of understanding of actually why this is important, how it's going to help the business more long term, how it means that they can connect with more of the people working in their organisation. So even on that side of things, I think it's great that those businesses are coming forward and doing it anyway. Obviously, the ones that I love interacting with the most are the ones who have a passion for it, want to do B Corp certification because they just generally think it's the right thing to do. They want an ESG strategy because they care about the society that they live in. They don't want to be making a bigger footprint on the world than they have to. So those are the people that I really love working with. And I find it beautifully challenging working with the people who are doing it as a tick boxing exercise. So one way or another, I think we're all on this blue dot together, and we've all got to face the same challenges together.
Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. So, you know, a lot of the themes on this podcast are around transformation, community, impact. So on a topic such as this, as you say, there's all different types of stakeholders, there's all different types of belief systems, there's non-believers as well, as we well know. Even people who run countries are non-believers. But yeah, it's quite an interesting community of people that you're connecting with on a topic that impacts everyone. And so what we see a lot of is pain points, so challenges that then can either stop a company on a transformation journey or kind of have them focused on too much stuff. So I was really interested in seeing what the common barriers are that you see companies facing in trying to achieve their ESG visions or B Corp status, you know, around the sustainability topic.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really common themes, regardless of if you're big, small, medium-sized organisation, doesn't matter what industry you're in, the why behind why you're coming into it. I think generally the first one I would say is resourcing. That is always a challenge for businesses. Again, whether you're 1 or 2 people or 500 people, I think there is a change of thinking around that now. For medium and large organisations, they are putting time and money towards hiring an individual who is solely managing their sustainability journeys. For smaller businesses, obviously that's harder, and that's where my services hopefully come in. So I've been looking into and working with an organisation called Simpler with AI, and we are looking into how my consultancy services can become more efficient and effective with AI working with me in the background, so that I can go into smaller organisations and be faster and more efficient, working with them to set up their strategies and to figure out what the key priorities are. So resourcing is a huge one. The next one is probably complexity and understanding. As we've spoken about, the regulatory landscape is not the easiest to navigate. There are many different frameworks out there, many different guidelines, whether you're in the UK, the EU, operating internationally. So that can become a bit of a quagmire of different acronyms and whether you need to be focusing on finances alongside the sustainability reporting as well. So complexity and understanding is a tricky one. So making sure that I try and make sure that I remove any acronyms when I'm speaking with my clients, and to really help them on the journey, no matter where they are, if they have no understanding of the sustainability landscape at all, or if they're partway down the journey. Next one is buy-in from people across the business. So you might have a couple of board members who have been asked by their investors to do something. That doesn't mean that you're going to get the whole organisation on board immediately. So, and you need to be working across the business. So you need people from your operational teams, you need people from your leadership teams, HR. It's really across the board that you need everybody on the business to understand why they are having these additional asks put in front of them on top of their day-to-day work. I think that kind of upfront ask can feel quite a lot, but once practices get embedded into the business, it's just a shift from their day-to-day that will be ever so slight. So I think long-term, that is easier to take people on the journey. It's the upfront ask that's quite difficult. The last and final big one for me is short-termism and short-term thinking. Right. So what B Corp, what ESG strategy building, what sustainable business practices is asking us all to do is to move away from short-term thinking. And I have to take a bit of a step back here, because really fundamentally what we're talking about is the capitalist system in its current form is not working for people and planet. We have seen that growth that is unfettered is absolutely destroying our societies and our environment. And so what we're trying to do is to find a different way of doing capitalism, essentially. So B Lab call it capitalism 2.0. The broader sustainability movement might look at donut economics, or it might look at degrowth. Degrowth is a bit of a scary sounding word, but ultimately we're saying we don't need capitalist models, businesses, economies to exponentially grow forever. In fact, they can't. It's an impossible dream. It doesn't exist. So we need to figure out what the alternative is. And so when we're coming in and talking about setting up business practices and embedding decision making that encourages leadership and the rest of the organization to be taking into consideration environment, people, transparency, alongside profit for their shareholders. What we're really talking about is moving from that short-term thinking to long-term thinking, so that the business can survive beyond the next 5 or 10 years, really well into the future of the next 50 years. And that can only happen if we reach net zero, if we look at our DE&I policies and we get good representation within our businesses, and we're truly reporting transparently to our customers and to the regulatory bodies. So that is such a huge mind shift for people, and it feels impossible because we live under this capitalist system that is really hard to decouple ourselves from. But I think it can be a very inspiring place to be, and I've certainly met enough people within my industry and the clients that I work with who believe that it's entirely possible and come up with amazing ideas and ways of moving forward with that very big piece of work.
Yeah, no, it's so far-reaching, and as you say, it's literally the future of our planet. So it's not, it's not like a piece of work that you can just go, I'll leave that till Friday. But you hit on something quite interesting there in terms of getting ideas from other, outside of. I suppose what I'm talking about is you mentioned all the different stakeholders that might need to be engaged within a company. So from leadership, HR, everyone that's working within that company, getting different perspectives, getting different kind of backgrounds, DEI, making sure the transparency is there. But what I'm asking in your kind of experience is, how are you connecting businesses with ideas outside of their own sector? Because I think in sustainability, we see progress in different areas, Sweden, you've got the big names like Sweden, Singapore, but there's also, smaller countries that are doing things that are really innovative and radical, but they're just not being heard about. And have you connected companies with ideas like that are just very interesting that they'd have never found before?
Yeah, I think that's the fantastic thing about the B Corp community in general. It enables myself as a consultant, but also the clients themselves who go on to become B Corp certified. It opens up this massive community. So within the UK, there are 2,000 B Corps alone. And then globally, there's 8,700. And that is just growing so quickly. And then kind of within that, the 2,000 businesses in the UK, there's 80,000 workers, and then globally 800,000 workers directly working for B Corps. And then if you think about all of the supply chains and stakeholders connected with those individual workers and the businesses, that number becomes massive. And so what B Corp does a really good job of is not only offering the certification and the logo to put on your product or your website, but it opens up this community online and in person to be able to bring together people who can help build out this ecosystem of services and products. I think a big challenge that people are facing is how to B Corp or how to make their supply chains more sustainable.
Yes.
And so when you introduce them to these ecosystems, that becomes a lot easier because you're in a room together or you're online together saying, oh, I need some marketing services or I need to find some eco packaging. There's already a B Corp out there doing it. And for those who aren't going down the B Corp route, particularly in Brighton, where we are right now, I found our community to be so welcoming and open in terms of realizing that if we're going to move into this different system, we can't go into it with the mindset of everyone is competition and everything is competition. It seems like once you move into a more sustainable business mindset, it also comes with abundance thinking, and that is that there's enough work for everybody, and actually there's already somebody out there doing something fantastic. So reach out to the people that you're connected with, reach out to your ecosystem and your bubbles, because there's going to be someone out there who can help. In terms of direct connections with people, I think I probably can't talk about that because it's confidential work. But it's just been really inspiring to be around and fantastic to see.
And I suppose just kind of going a bit more into what you do, not specifically for clients, but if there's a company listening to this and they're aware of their ESG strategy and they might have thought about B Corp before, but what is it that you really bring to that kind of strategy focus and that certification, whether it's B Corp or another kind of sustainable focus? Yeah,
absolutely. So in my last kind of 4 years of being in the B Corp community, I've worked with probably about 25 clients at this point, taking them through the assessment. Not all of them have gone through to final certification stage. They've maybe realised that B Corp isn't necessarily for them, but they are using the framework and the assessment to build out that strategy piece. So even when I'm building ESG strategies with clients, I'm using B Corp as a framework because to me and to a lot of other people, it's the most comprehensive ESG framework available. It covers environmental, social, and governance pillars equally and very, very in depth. And so from working with so many different clients in varying industries of different sizes, I have seen the assessment in all its different forms. At the start of setting up the assessment, you put in some company details around your size and your industry, and that changes the questions that come through. So there's about 200 questions in the assessment, and they adjust and shift depending on the information you give it. So I've seen a lot of nuances come through. I've seen a lot of complications, and worked with businesses that have complex structures as well. So they're not trying to certify just one of their businesses. They may be trying to certify 3 at once in different geographies, with varying locations, whether they're offices or manufacturing facilities. So because it's so comprehensive, that also means it can be quite complex. So I live and breathe this assessment, so I really think that I bring an expertise to understanding the language that B Lab uses. It can be quite nuanced, and being able to just fly through the assessment and give recommendations on actually when they're asking this particular question, it's this policy that they're looking for. And because B Corp has given me a comprehensive understanding of all 3 ESG pillars, I like to think that I can take a step back and help businesses strategize alongside their current business planning. So I've been an executive assistant in the past. I've sitting in on various board meetings across the museum and fintech, and I can understand how complex business planning can already be. So if you're then trying to factor in, okay, we need to actually adjust our business practices to be more sustainable, that can be quite a long journey to go on. So there's an element of being the guiding hand, being the support that they can come to when they need that level of expertise, but also just need some encouragement sometimes, because it is a long journey and it's not necessarily straightforward, but I really hope that I allow people to see that it can be simplified, and you can work to certain priorities that actually match your business needs and business planning. Just because a large corporation has a 20-stage plan over the next 5 years, you might be a business of 5 people and you don't need that kind of complexity, and that's absolutely fine. So I just want to take away some of the fear element that sits within making these strategies and looking at sustainable business, because it shouldn't be scary. It should be exciting and should be seen as an opportunity for everyone, I think.
Absolutely. No, that's really inspiring, like kind of the different approach for different size businesses. And I suppose that leads me into a question about, you mentioned stakeholder engagement earlier, and I suppose a common pitfall with whether it's ESG roadmaps in general, strategy, DEI, all of these acronyms that we keep using, but is actually failing to make them part of company culture. And really just wanted to kind of ask you how you support businesses, whether they're a 5-person business or 20-stage complex roadmap, of how you support both their stakeholders and make sure that it's in line with the company culture and the vision.
Yeah, absolutely. So the B Corp assessment is kind of a starting point for understanding, and any ESG strategy building is a starting point for understanding what is material to your business. So a term that's used within my industry is materiality assessments. And again, these can vary in complexity, but at their core, what they're trying to do is to go out and assess what is material to the stakeholders within your business ecosystem, what they think are the material ESG issues that are facing your organization. So either this can be a survey that you send out to your customers, your supply chain, your workers, that has 10 categories of different ESG principles and focus areas, and it just asks them to put in order of importance what they think the business should be focusing on. Not necessarily what they value personally, but what is material to that business. So that's one way of thinking about materiality. And then there's also double materiality, and this is a much more in-depth assessment that is undertaken usually by larger organisations that has to think about what is the impact of the business on the environment and on society, and then also what are the impacts from the environment and from society on the business. And that's why it's called double, because it's taking that two-way lens. So before we even kind of get into the business planning stage, I generally recommend to businesses to carry out a materiality assessment depending on the size of their organisation. That is the first way to engage your stakeholders, because you're really saying to them, okay, we want to do something, and we know that this is important, but we need all of you to put into this. We need all of you on this journey from the very beginning. And we're going to take all those views and considerations into account, and we're going to build from that point. So that's the first stage. I would then say that going throughout the planning, there needs to be some element of capacity building. So it's all very well and good me as a consultant going in and lending my expertise, but the point is to do that embedding piece, and is to ensure that all the practices are going to carry on. They're going to be understood as to why they're important, so that they are embedded and can continue long term. So for me, it's all about educating alongside the planning. So bringing experts in to do workshops, I think is an engaging way of doing that. If there's less resourcing available, there are so many videos, tools, platforms available online that you can give your staff and your workers access to, or point them in the direction of. And trying to have direct one-on-one conversations with people about the things that they're passionate about in terms of the environment or society, because I might be interested in plastic recycling, but then Sandra down the road might be interested in D&I issues. And as long as there's multiple people trying to work on these issues within your business, then you're doing it together and you're building that sense of community. And I think the momentum can feel a lot more positive, rather than putting it all on the HR manager or putting it all on the operations manager. There's no way they're going to be able to shift an entire business out of one way of thinking into another without that cooperation from everyone. So those are the two key recommendations that I make to businesses and try to work with them on.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's really, it is really about the people. And that's, from my perspective, that's how, change happens, is bringing different ideas, having a diverse mix of, cultures, ideas, backgrounds. That's where innovation happens. Then once the innovation happens, you then can start to, move forward. Once the innovation happens, you get the team builds up, people are behind the vision, and it all starts to roll.
Yeah.
Just quickly, kind of focusing on some of the tools you mentioned. You mentioned AI, and I'm quite intrigued. They don't sound like bedfellows, do they?
No, they don't. They're both definitely the two hot topics at the moment.
You're right in the middle. You're the sweet spot.
I am right in the middle. I'm still at the beginning of my learning journey with AI. I think a lot of people are. Obviously, it's this, I say new tool in inverted commas for those who can't see me. I think, academically, large language models have been studied, and they've been trying to be built out since the 90s. So AI has been coming for a long time, but it feels like it's landed in our laps so quickly and in such a big, overwhelming way that, again, it's alongside sustainability, it can feel quite scary. And so my understanding, kind of, I guess, starting from last year, it's one of those pieces of technology that isn't going anywhere. It's not a fluke, or, it's not, I'm going to use blackberries as an example, something that stuck around for a little while but then has disappeared completely. It is fundamentally going to change the way that we live our lives, how we work, how we interact with one another, what we have time for. And so I personally wanted to understand that. And then, of course, there's a duality to AI and sustainability. First of all, there's the sustainability of AI, which is a big elephant in the room. And obviously, AI language models, they take a huge amount of computing power, and we need our big technology companies to be really focusing on how they're going to make their services more efficient and working off of green grids. There's a lot of work being done in that area from large corporations to smaller ones locally in Brighton as well. So there's that side of it. And then the other side is using AI to enhance our sustainability journeys, to make them easier, more accessible, more efficient. And so I've really been trying to tap into this accessibility point because, as I mentioned before, bigger businesses and corporations, they do have the extra resourcing to be able to hire someone to take them on their journeys.
Yeah.
Small organisations, particularly, within the local community that I'm in here, they don't have the resourcing for that. And there's even restricted resourcing for the standard rates that sustainability consultants charge. We hold a lot of expertise. We hold a lot of knowledge. We do ongoing training. So I definitely do not blame people for having high day rates. But it does mean that organisations who have people who have, maybe it's them solo or up to 5 staff or 10, that kind of money just isn't necessarily there, especially in the middle of a cost of living crisis. We can't give up on sustainability because the economy is restricted. I was going to use a bad word then. So yeah, I want to make my services more accessible, and I want people to understand that even if they don't want to work with a consultant, they can go on this journey themselves. Opening up ChatGPT or using Microsoft's service, you can ask it so many questions. It holds the world's knowledge. It will respond to you in a way that is accessible if you ask it to. You can double check how truthful it's being. I know that is a concern for some people. But you literally ask it the question and get it to fact check and provide the sources that it's getting that information from. So that, yeah, I think there is so much scope for using AI to get us on the pathway that we need to be on within the tight time frame that the UN is giving us, that all climate scientists are giving us. We need to be utilizing the technology that is literally at our fingertips to be able to take us on this journey, to speed it up as quickly as possible.
Amazing. And do you say please and thank you to AI?
All the time.
Yeah, I feel like you get a good sense of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I joke about it. Robot uprising, you want to be on the right side of history. But genuinely, large language models, they're learning from the language that you are using. And so from the bigger databases and your individual involvement with them, they will pick up on the way that you are interacting with them. If you're being rude to them, if you're not using polite language, if you're using aggressive language or racist language, like, it picks up on all of those things. So I think being considerate about the way that you're interacting with this new technology is really, really important. So I always say my please and thank yous. I always am checking for diversity statements that I'm putting in there, making sure that I'm not using gendered language. Because, obviously people are building out the AI language tools at OpenAI. There's a lot of tech people working in the background, and I do hope that they are focusing on how to diversify their pool of talent to make sure that the language models are, that what's being put out to us is becoming more diverse and more accessible for people. But it's also on us as the users to make sure that we're doing that as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. And just really final question, but just as a sustainability expert, leaving everyone today, are you doom or are you gloom in terms of how businesses, we know the big brands sometimes are not particularly putting the effort in that we feel that they should, and then that can lead to a bit of apathy from consumers and people. Are you doom or gloom in terms of the planet for people?
Well, you caught me on a good day. Yeah, I think for everybody, it really is dependent on the day. If I'm having a doom day, if I'm having a down day, I have to remind myself that it is all about the people and us as individuals trying to make one more better decision a day. It's not about overhauling your life and changing everything. It's about making one decision that is in a day that's going to leave the world a better place, or leave your community a better place, or even a neutral place, just trying not to make it worse. So even if I feel like I'm not, if I feel like I can't possibly do enough in my lifetime, I remind myself that there's 8 billion other people on this planet, and if we all decided to do one better thing a day, how many billions and billions of good decisions does that add up to? And that, to me, is the most inspiring place to be entering into the world and trying to navigate through it.
Bit of positivity. And I also realised that I gave you doom or gloom as options. Not really...
both negative.
But thank you so much, Demi. And where can people... So if people are interested in B Corp, ESG, sustainability, or finding out about, plastic recycling, whatever your topic is, AI, the things that have been raised today, where can they find you?
Yep. So my website is Hearth Sustainability. So that's a combination of my second name, Heath, and Earth. Just in case people find that difficult to find. So hearthsustainability.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Demi Heath. I have red hair, so I'm easy to spot. And if you want more information on B Corp, visit B Lab UK. Just type them into Google. They have a huge amount of resources and information available. And also do get in touch if you're a small business. Myself and Simpler and with AI are running a pilot project together, and we are looking to do a B Corp and ESG strategy program with small businesses utilizing AI, and that's at a reduced fee so that we can get feedback on how they're finding services and how we're using the AI to make things more efficient.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Demi, and look forward to hearing more from you soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a good chat.
Well, there you have it. Powerful insights into the world of business and what lies ahead. Thank you to all our Change Shapers listeners for tuning into our podcast, and to our guest today for sharing their knowledge with our community. Our episodes are designed to spark conversation and start collaborations. So if you're interested by what you heard, then please share with your colleagues or on social media and join the chat with our guest today. Change Shapers is part of the Casaris brand, and we can be found on LinkedIn. Just search for COSARIS, or on Instagram as Change Shapers Podcast. Please subscribe, rate and review Change Shapers Podcast. We can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and wherever you find your favourite pods. I've been Jay Taylor. Let's turn uncertainty into opportunity together. Catch you in the next episode.